I am in serious seed starting mode here in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm doing things pretty differently to last year. I'm actually going to go really early on some of my autumn and winter veggies, and there's a reason why, which I will explain to you in a minute. I'm also using quite a different method for how I'm actually going to be starting these seeds. Some will go straight in the garden, but because I am going so early, a lot of them I'm going to be starting inside, which I'm going to have to really control the light on. I'll explain how I do that in a minute too. Last year I followed all the instructions on the seed packets, but that only really factors in climate. So it tells you which climate you're in when you should start. It doesn't factor in a lot of the other issues that we have, especially here in Melbourne. But I think I've worked out a way of hacking the system a little bit. My name's Christy Cooper, aka Green Thumbed Reporter. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, we run gardening tours in Melbourne, Australia every month, usually weekly. I'm a mum of 3 and a veggie gardening lover. I do not pretend to be an expert. However, I'm a journalist by trade, going back to work soon, and I love interviewing people. So on this channel, you will often find me interviewing other people who are experts in their trades. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so now. And if you want to see a full veggie garden tour, that's coming in the next couple of days. It is still very much summer. We've had a 40-degree day recently. We've got some 30-degree days coming up, but I'm already thinking about my winter veggies, probably more specifically autumn veggies, but I'm starting a whole lot of seeds today. The first thing I'm doing differently is the tray that I'm raising them in. I'm trying these little seed plugs rather than bigger seedling trays, mostly because I think it's going to be a lot easier to move around if it works. If I can get enough nutrients in there, look how little they are. So I'm going to use a sort of a mixture between a hydroponic method and a normal growing method, and I am quietly optimistic. I'm actually quite excited about that. Now this is the seed raising mix that I'm using this time around. It's a little bit different to what I used last time because it's specifically formulated with hydroponics in mind. So what have I used? I've used cocoa coir, some of this stuff. I have used perlite because it not only retains moisture but it also aerates the soil. This one holds a lot of moisture, so it keeps everything really moist so that those seeds can germinate nicely and not dry out. I've also added vermiculite, which is if you ever buy seedlings and you see little metallic-y kind of bits in there, that's the vermiculite, and worm castings in there too to add a bit of nutrition for when the seedlings get a little bit bigger. So when seeds first go in, the seed itself contains all the nutrition that it's going to need to sprout. As it gets bigger, it's going to need more than that. But that's why I'm going to add nutrient solution into the water that I water it with. So I don't know if it's going to work, so maybe don't copy that, but you'll find out in a few weeks' time. The next thing I'm going to talk you through today is exactly what I'm planting and why. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't have even considered starting some of these seeds now. Like, for example, my sugar snap peas. Yeah, that just happened. Gonna have to save some of those. I am obsessed with sugar snap peas from the garden. They are so much better than anything you will ever find in the supermarket. Unfortunately, my kids have worked that out too, and they have become veggie snobs. I wouldn't ordinarily think of these now because I don't love the heat. But the reason I am going to get these in today is because every year they get demolished by rats and possums when I plant them. But here's the thing, usually when I plant them, everything else in my garden has cleared out. So as the weather cools down, as the leaves drop off, as autumn hits, there is a lot less food around, particularly for possums. So possums that will often eat the trees, the tops of the trees around here. When those leaves fall, the possums have a much scarcer food source and they come to my garden. I've found, however, that the same seedlings, so for example, my all year round seedlings that they might smash at the end of autumn, they don't touch in summer. And I've spoken to someone about this recently and they said it's just because there's an abundance of food around in summer and there's not in the winter. So I'm going to go early, get my sugar snap peas in now and a lot of my other winter veggies, which are also delicious to rats and possums, so that when they do come looking for their food, those plants are a bit more developed, and when they nibble away, they're less likely to destroy the whole plant If you can imagine, baby plant, take a bite, it's gone. Big plant, take a bite, it can survive. That's my goal. So that's not just sugar snap peas. That is also lots of my brassicas. I am going to start my brassicas way earlier this year too. So what do I mean by brassicas? I'm talking about cabbage, I'm talking about cauliflower, I'm talking about kale, I'm talking about, where are the others? Broccoli and broccolini, purple bunching broccoli last year. I had a nightmare time with it because the pests kept eating it. So here's the thing that's different when you look at brassicas and some of the others compared to a lot of the summer veggies. The entire plant is edible. So you can eat the whole kale plant. You can eat the whole cabbage plant. You can eat the whole broccoli plant, believe it or not. Those leaves are really nutritious. The possums and the rats know that too. They're not going to gnaw away at your tomato plant because your tomato plant tastes gross. They will, however, steal your tomatoes if they want to. Once they start ripening up, they know what's delicious, they've tried it, they've worked it out. So any type of crop where the entire plant is edible, I'm going early this year. If they don't survive, that's okay. I'm going to succession plant. I'm going to start seedlings now. I'm going to have an excess. Someone once said to me in the past, "You're not a farmer, Christy. You don't need to plant that many seeds." But here's the thing, they're so good to give away. I have never not been able to find a use for an excess seedling. It is such a lovely way of spreading the joy in the community, particularly with my kids at school. A lot of their friends are now getting into gardening, so I can just give them away. Here's the other reason why I am starting my brassicas early this year. Usually, one of the biggest threats to brassicas is when I talk about pests, hey, yes, she has eaten them out of the ground before. I thought I had a different problem and then I caught her one day pulling them out. Anyway, story for another day. Cabbage, white butterfly. Last year, we had an absolute plague. Brassicas that weren't covered up got demolished. Cabbage white butterfly, they're beautiful, they fly in, they lay their eggs, they look gorgeous. You don't know what's happening until you look down a week or so later and the whole thing's covered in holes, and a week after that, the entire plant has gone. These hungry little cheeky caterpillars eat the whole lot up. But I've hardly seen any around this year. Hardly any. I had a kale plant uncovered for 10 days over the summer break when I went away. And I came back and there were a few little caterpillar holes in it, but hardly any. And that said to me, whoa, one of the main reasons I don't plant that sort of stuff over summer is because of the cabbage white butterflies. Now, some of them, you read the instructions and they say don't tolerate heat particularly well, but my kale's thriving, so I'm gonna give it a go. I also know in Melbourne, broccoli farmers, they farm broccoli all year round outside, uncovered. They use sprays to get rid of the caterpillars, but they don't worry about the heat. They grow all year round. So I'm going early. I'm going early on my broccoli. I'm going early on my cabbage. I'm going early on my kale. And I'm going to plant seeds again in a month's time so that I can whip out the ones that aren't working and replace them with good ones. That's why you should start growing things from seed. Now, when I talk about all these things I've just mentioned, they're all going into a seedling tray inside. So some of those I've cheated and bought seedlings and I've already planted them outside. I'm going to save that for my full garden tour, which I'll be uploading in a few days' time. Today we're focusing on seeds. So I'm also going to start all those seeds inside where it's temperature controlled and also where I can control the sun. And I'll tell you how I'm going to do that in a minute too. So I'm using little tiny pop sticks to write the labels on. I'm also using a biro because if you use a texter, as I've learned the hard way, it just washes off. Biro is actually not the best option. The best option is a grey lead pencil, but I couldn't find one. Grey lead I find is the best one because it doesn't seem to wash off at all. But this is a really easy way of labelling your plants, and these are just from the kids' craft kit. But you can sort of find them at a little party shop or whatever for, a couple of dollars for a bag of 100. So the other thing I'm doing differently to usual is usually I would plant 2 or 3 seeds in each little space and then I just pick the best one. Because these are so tiny, I am just going to go one in each, and if any of them don't germinate, that's okay. If any of them aren't particularly strong, that's okay. I'm overplanting, and yes, you can hear the kiddos in the background, so that's what that background noise is. But we'll just press on, or I wouldn't get anything done. So let me show you what I've planted in here. Spinach, purple broccoli, kohlrabi, red cabbage, beetroot, Romanesco, Brussels sprouts. So mostly brassicas in this one, and then I'm going to keep going. Now the last thing which I haven't touched on yet is lettuces. Lettuces, we love salads from the garden. We have them every day. I feel like we grow so many lettuces, and yet it's the one thing we never seem to have enough of. We would have a homegrown salad every night if we could. So I'm getting lettuces in today. If I remember, I'll also get them in a couple of weeks' time. And if I remember, I'll get them in a couple of weeks' time after that too. And we'll just keep on going. Same with sugar snap peas. I'm going to succession plant those. So let's go. So the seeds that I'm not going to start inside, but I'm going to start outside instead, are those that do best if their roots aren't disturbed. So in particular, carrots. Carrots, I'm going to sprinkle them around an area that I know won't be too disturbed in between plantings, and in one of the beds it doesn't need to be topped up. Most of my beds need to be topped up a lot, so I'm not going to want to plant new things in there until I've had a chance to really refresh the soil for the next season. So I'm strategically thinking carrots, they can take a really long time, they're going to be growing for a few months. Which space in my garden do I not need to disturb before I set it up for the next season? Carrots, also my sugar snap peas, which I talked about, they are going straight into the garden today. They grow really quickly. They don't transplant as well. But also these seedling trays, I don't think are going to be big enough for sugar snap pea roots. I don't think so. So I just think the sugar snap peas are probably safer outside. Okay, so I've also planted in this one lettuce, all different varieties, but doesn't matter, I'll plant them the same way. Purple kale, peas, sugar snap peas. Now I said I was going to do them outside only, and then I changed my mind. I'm going to do them both. So I've put sugar snap peas straight outside. I'm going to start them in here just as a little test to see how it goes. And I'm watering it all in from the top with a sprayer, because it's most important, obviously, that those seeds are wet. And then I am also watering from the bottom just to make sure that whole lot soaks through. This is a bit less effective. Try not to get your seeds wet, rookie error. Same with that, watering from the bottom to soak it all through, watering from the top just to make sure those seeds are definitely wet. Now, next thing I want to show you is how I am going to ensure they get adequate sun when they've sprouted. So first thing I'm going to do is actually cover them up and keep them as moist as possible. They don't need any sun before they've sprouted. Some seeds do, these ones don't. Then as soon as these have sprouted, I will make sure they're getting lots and lots of sun. I'm not going to put them outside. I'm going to use a grow light. So in the past, I've used a grow light that I bought off Amazon, which worked quite well, but I had to turn it on and off. Sometimes I forgot. It was a bit of a nightmare. This year, I am using a new grow light that Gatherer have sent me. This is one of their newest products, the Gatherer Sun Panel, it is called. And I'm really looking forward to giving it a go. The best thing about it, compared to the previous lights I've used, is that it has a timer, so it will set itself on and off automatically. So it's just less maintenance. It also looks quite nice, the new Gatherer light. It looks a lot nicer than the last one I had. Little reminder, if you're sowing the seeds and you haven't had a lot of experience sowing seeds, the general rule of thumb is to bury them about 2 to 3 times their width. So if it's a tiny little seed, it needs to be quite shallow. If it's a big seed, it can go down a bit deeper. That medium, growing medium or soil, needs to be moist constantly. When I start seeds, if I put them in the kitchen, I have the greatest success rate because I'm in the kitchen all the time. I can constantly check up on them. Hello, Luce. Hello, darling. I can make sure I know when they are in need of water, when they sprout, I can make sure they're getting enough sun. Now, in the meantime, who'd like to see Lucy doing a little trick? This gal is just past 10 months old and thinks she is a whole lot older than that. Bye-bye. When I started my summer seeds, many of you at home planted yours at the same time. And that was really fun because it meant we could actually sort of grow together. You told me how yours were going, I shared how mine were going. Many of you requested more frequent updates, so the good news is I have a little bit of help at home for the next little while. I've got someone who's helping me with the kids a couple of afternoons a week, which is going to give me more time to do this. So if you want to see how these seeds grow more frequently than monthly, let me know, and maybe I can do the weekly tours again, maybe even bi-weekly tours. Many of you found this channel recently through an interview I did with Dr. Paul Horn, who's an entomologist, talking all about insects in the garden, which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, what to do when you've got the bad ones, how to attract the good ones. You guys loved that. So he's actually coming back to my garden in about a week's time. If you've got specific questions for him, leave them in the comments below and I'll try and get him to answer all of them. Everything in the garden is looking amazing at the moment and I'm loving it. At the beginning of every month I run a full garden tour, so keep an eye out for that. I think it's the start of the new month tomorrow. I think I might be doing it tomorrow. Stay tuned.